Okay, go ahead.
So you think communism or Marxism is compatible with Christianity?
Yep.
Doesn't that contradict like most of the things the popes have said?
No.
So like when Pope Pius XII or like Pope Leo XIII called like communism wicked and said that like socialism isn't compatible at all with Christianity, you think they were just wrong?
Yeah.
Well, I would take what the popes say is compatible with the church way more than what you would say.
Would you?
Yeah. I mean, I
So
think
you
that's like a
really
very reasonable I think that's a very reasonable
okay?
thing to do.
Do you attribute great weight to words of the popes to the point where it would define your whole worldview?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think they're like sitting in the seat of Peter, right?
Interesting you say that. So what do the popes say about racism?
Like which pope?
Well, what is the papal doctrine currently about white nationalism and racial discrimination and racism?
Yeah, Pope Leo, excuse me, not Pope Leo. Pope Pius XII called for
Mhm.
something. He said that the Catholic Church position is not a type of a pagan worship of race, but it's not a denial. He specifically called for a healthy racism. And then in his
Mhm.
encyclical critiquing the Nazis, he said that race is a fundamental value of humanity and is something that God ordained.
What about what Pope Paul the Sixth said
Pope Paul, what did he say about it?
about racial discrimination? You know that
Do you think those two things contradict each other?
well, I think they kind of do. I think that is the Vatican II has been pretty absolutely clear on, it's not ensure the recognition everywhere of everyone's right to human culture without distinction of race. Racial discrimination possesses at the moment a character of relevance by reason of the tensions it stirs up. Racism is a sin that divides
I
the
don't
human family.
disagree. I don't disagree that this type of vile, ignorant, unjustified
No,
discrimination and
the
racism is a
race
sin.
is a sin. They just said it directly.
I don't disagree with that, but when they say racism there, they're talking about a type of vile, ignorant discrimination that treats
Well, who are
people
you to
worse than
interpret
others.
words? The Pope said it themselves.
Yeah,
Pope
that's
Francis,
this. Yeah, Pope
no
Leo the 12th
telling.
not the Pope during Vatican II?
Okay, so which Pope do you recognize? Only that one, or all the popes that
No,
came
when
after
I
are
when
not?
I when I when I gave the quote about healthy racism, that was the exact same Pope during Vatican II.
The sixth?
No, it's Pope Pius XII. Was he not the Pope during Vatican II?
Well, I'm talking about after in
Okay.
1971.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
it's the same thing. I mean, you can go to the catechism right
pretty
now.
the popes absolutely rejected racism, and they
Well,
reject it within the church, and they reject it within society.
I mean, it's
And they
literally in the encyclical that Pope Pius XII wrote that race is a fundamental value to humanity. And the same Pope who was the Pope during Vatican II said that the Catholic position is not this type of racism that should be condemned, but it's also not ignoring the differences between the races, but to acknowledge and value that God ordained differences between the nations, and that is something that's actually a gift from God. But this is a pivot away from
they
what
don't say
popes.
racism is a gift from God. I don't know what you're. If they're just saying that the diversity of different peoples is a gift from God, that's not the same thing as saying they support white nationalism or tolerate it.
I didn't say that now, did I? That's a different claim.
I mean, all the popes rejected racism. It's
He
just a fact.
literally called for a healthy racism. Like I can show you the quote.
He said healthy racism.
Yeah. But what does this have to do with communism being
Where does
compatible
he
with
say?
well, hold on. What does this have
Oh,
to do with communism being compatible with Christianity? This is a big pivot.
well, because you said that for you, Christianity is the Pope, and that the Pope defines your worldview,
It's not
and that
necessarily what I
means,
said. But
well,
okay.
that's exactly what you said. I asked you directly, and it's what you said.
Okay. Not really. I mean, the Pope is infallible in certain issues, and I'm going to take what the Pope says about what's compatible with Christianity way more than what you say, right? That seems like the reasonable thing to do.
Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you apply the same when it comes to racism?
I just told you the church is very. My opinions on race are exactly in line with the church. Is that you value your race, but you shouldn't treat other people differently because they're a different race. It's an important characteristic of humanity, but you shouldn't exalt it over than what it should. The role it should play.
Well, when that's what you claim, right? But for example, in the U.S., you claim you're a white nationalist. So what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, I believe people should have the freedom of association. So
Okay,
if white people want to cultivate together and form their own communities,
they
maybe
already it's already something that happens. So what do
no,
you?
no, no, it's not. Not on the basis of race, at least. And most of the time, even when they do it by like de facto, they get hit
So
with
you think
lawsuits.
people should be able to create a town and that just says no black people and no non-white people?
Do you disagree with that?
Yes, I do. And I mean, how could you justify that if under the law, unless you're creating a different state?
Yeah, well, I think we should change the law. I don't think the law is the inhibitor of truth, right? Or just because something's the law doesn't make it what people ought not to do.
So what gives someone the right to move somewhere just beyond the fact that they have a certain racial origin?
What
How do you
gives
determine
someone the right?
what
Yeah, I
the
mean,
blood quantums that determine? I mean, how do you even decide that,
well,
you
that no,
know?
that would just be up to the people who are forming the community. I wouldn't be the one who's dictating it, right?
So what so can do you think that any kind of exclusive community should be able
Yeah,
to form
yeah. I mean,
at all? Not
America's
just
not
based
really
on
a
race.
yeah, 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 yeah. I just believe in freedom of
So
association. I don't believe people
so
should be forced to cultivate.
these communities should still be recipients of our tax dollars, and we should still have to
That's a joke,
subsidize
right?
that. I'm
That's a,
asking you, should these
do you
communities still be
think
recipients
do you
of
think
tax dollars?
do you think tax dollars is what funds government programs?
Does the central federal government or the state governments, for that matter, which are who have a multiracial constituency, is it their job to fund these exclusive racial communities that
No,
you're talking
no,
about?
no, 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 no. I don't think that'd be right.
So who's going to fund them? Because they if they
Themselves.
want. Okay, so how are they going to be completely autarkic in a state, for
I didn't
example?
claim they would be completely autarkic, right? They can still engage in commerce and whatnot, and they
So
can they can get their own. It
who's
would
gonna,
work almost like an autonomous zone, except it's more private.
like Chaz?
No, not like Chaz.
What's the difference?
It's not some gay hippie commune.
Yeah, it's just a gay white nationalist commune.
Why would it be gay? Or do you think? Do you
You
think?
tell me.
No, you're the one.
You,
Why would I tell you? You're the one who accused it of being gay.
no, I'm just using your words.
Well, Chaz was filled with homosexuals and degenerates,
So was the Nazi Party under Ernest Röhm,
and he was murdered during the Night of Long Knives, right?
because he was too open about it. Anyway,
No,
look.
he wasn't open about it at all, actually. Like that was, and by the way, even like when people figured out that he was gay, like Goebbels,
All
Himmler,
right, I could tell you're really invested in this topic. What do you think
you're the
about
one who
Hitler?
mentioned Rome, but
In
okay.
your own words, what do you think about Hitler?
I've mixed opinions about Hitler.
Do you think Hitler was a Christian?
I think he probably considered himself a Christian, but he was a heretic.
Because this is a quote from Hitler. Pure Christianity, the Christianity of the catacombs, is concerned with translating the Christian doctrine into facts. It leads quite simply to the annihilation of mankind. It is merely wholehearted Bolshevism under a tinsel of metaphysics. That's what
Where is
Hitler said
that?
about
Where's that
Christianity.
quote? Where's that quote from?
Hitler's Table Talk, 14th of December,
Lamau. That's a joke,
1941.
right? Have you read Table Talks?
Why is it a joke?
Yeah, because there's multiple historians like Richard Carrier and a couple other people that I mean the authenticity excuse me the authenticity. I'm not that good with saying some words. Don't judge me, please. But the reliability of Table Talks is something that is up extremely of debate. There's been entire books written about it. But even if you read table talks, like I would ask, what is the specific germ
Why
in
did
there
why
that's
why did he put the pagan swastika as the flag of the country rather than the cross?
that's a meme, right? You can go find swastikas on tons of churches. Like, in fact, a lot of people don't know where it comes from, but like the one of the most like accepted places where Hitler first saw the swastika was on the gravestone of his parents at in a church cemetery.
So why are we playing stupid here and denying
You're
the
the one
origin?
who pivoted to Nazism. I wanted to talk about communism, and it's real. And
No,
it's
well,
yeah.
you well, here's the thing. You said that you just go with what the Pope says, but Hitler was a pagan and you like Hitler and white
I said I have
nationalism.
mixed opinions about Hitler. I never said I liked Hitler. I have very mixed opinions about Hitler. Like I said, he was a heretic. He did a lot of things wrong.
You're not a very consistent follower of papal doctrine and Christianity
I
in
literally
general.
quoted the encyclical that Pope Leo XII wrote against the Nazis. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but the Pope never said that, a multiracial constituency has to fund white
I didn't
nationalist
say they had to fund it
enclaves.
either. I said it should be more private. If you're going to go out and fuck off, right, and
But
do
that's
your own
not
private
possible. But,
things.
but listen, we all know that there's no such thing as a private sector at scale. At scale, there's no such thing as a private
Well, that's
sector.
why we
There's no
need
such.
more state Okay. The reason why a private sector
So what are you saying? There's no such thing as the private sector at scale. When it comes
right
to
now,
infrastructure, when it comes to all of the things that require like the total resources of the country or giant, volumes of
right.
materials and construction and labor and skills, the private sector doesn't even fucking exist. Elon Musk's X, it's a government. Tesla was subsidized by the government. Every large scale project at scale that's owned by the private sector was created thanks to the government and owing to.
I don't disagree with any of this. I agree.
So when it comes to all the things that small communities depend on, if they want to live in a modern civilization, they depend on a centralized government whose
Mhm.
constituency in the USA is multiracial. So why should a multiracial constituency prop up, help, and fund a group of people who want to exclude people on the basis of race?
Well, I guess a couple things there. Number one is that, well, it doesn't. First of all I said is that people should have the freedom of association to, associate with who they want or who they don't want to, which will happened in this country long before the Civil Rights Act. So, I mean,
Okay, hold on.
if we could do it back
If
then, then
if
I
if
don't
you
see.
want if you want the resources and money from a multiracial centralized polity, you cannot set up barriers that say you can't come here, you're not allowed here if you're from a
Well,
certain race.
the government doesn't have to fund like the creation of these communities unless you're saying that like the specific
So,
money that
but
they're using, the state has a monopoly of. That's true.
every community that wants to participate in modern civilization has to depend upon the government one way or another. Every single one.
Okay, so what?
So unless this is a group of people that want to go live in the woods naked and not shower ever, then what you're talking about is not plausible and definitely probably would not be
Well, I don't think this is going to be plausible. I
probably
mean, it's
not
just
acceptable from church doctrine. Probably not acceptable.
dude, you're a communist, bro. What you're like, your entire ideology isn't acceptable off of church doctrine. Now, all I said is that if people
Pope
won't people,
Francis said that the communism is Christian. That's what he
no,
said. He got a hammer and
He
sickle.
said Marxism is wrong. Like that's a quote for quote.
That's
He
his
literally.
that's his opinion. He's allowed to have that opinion.
Yeah, but he don't say he said communism is Christian when the whole
Yeah, he
because
did. He
I know
did.
the quote you're referring to. It's not exactly communism is Christian,
Why
but
did he get a hammer and sickle from Evo Morales? Who forced him to do that?
why did he accept it? I don't know. He probably just accepted it as a gift.
But wouldn't he say that, like, would he accept a swastika, do you think?
I mean, I think there's a big stigmatization around a swastika compared to hammer and sickle.
No, I think he would say this is a profane, evil symbol if it was a swastika. But when it's a hammer and sickle, he was cool with it.
Yeah,
Also,
that's
he
what I
said
just said.
Christians and Marxists should work together to fight corruption.
I
I'm cool
agree.
with
Yeah,
that.
I agree. Well, I agree with that, but
If you want to just be a Catholic and you think that Marxism contradicts your Catholic worldview, and you want to just form some Catholic thing. We communists are willing to work with anyone who wants to fight corruption, and but we reject racialism. That's our issue, is the white nationalism thing.
Yeah, you don't like white people. I agree with that. But when you say that the papacy is like endorsing communism, that's not at all what's happening. Like, yes,
I don't have a problem with white people. I just have a
you do.
problem with
You don't want us to associate with each other. You don't care if we become a minority
who's.
in our homelands. I mean,
Well, white people can associate with each other, and white people can marry each other and have as many kids as they want.
can they form communities that exclude other people?
No, not in the USA.
Why
No, they
not? Why
can't.
shouldn't they be able to do that?
Because the constituency of the central government is multiracial, and you
No
need
way.
without the central government and without government, such communities can't exist. So
Without the
why
wait,
should
if the only
why
thing
should
you're
black
saying here is
people
there's roads and shit that they have to use in these communities, like I don't see
absolutely.
I don't
There's
see,
roads, there's roads, there's electricity,
right.
there's energy, there's law in the last resort. There's all sorts of things. I'm not even mentioning all the subsidies, all the federal projects, all these things, all the state projects for that matter, all these things that go into urban planning, sewage systems. People don't just come out of nowhere, a group of 20 people, and
I
say, we're just
agree.
going to create all this from scratch. It's not how it works.
But if you want to be fair, most of the infrastructure that we're talking about here was built by white people, right? And it's just like,
Well, white people are the majority of the population,
and
but they're
that's
not the.
changing, right? Because of the Marxist influence that has influenced policy around race
Why
and things of that nature.
why would Marxists care about making white people a minority? Can you explain that?
No, I'm saying that Marxists were responsible for like the shifting of views around race and immigration and things of that nature. And so that's where you get things like the Civil Rights Act and the Hart-Celler Act.
But MLK rejected Marxism.
Did I explicitly say MLK? Do you think MLK was the only civil rights leader? And even if he rejected Marxism, like he was still a leftist.
He was the leader of the civil rights movement, wasn't he?
He was a leftist. I mean, he was
The
influenced.
civil rights movement had its own ideology. It wasn't Marxist.
You don't think
Although
they
I
were
don't agree.
influenced by Marx? Do you think like the New Left people and like the
Um,
New York intellectuals
they
and
came
like the
after him.
Frankfurt
They came
School?
after him. The new left people.
It
You're
really
mixing up a
depends
lot
when
of
you
things.
say
Mixing up a lot of.
new left. But I mean, it's either the 70s or the 50s. But it's like, are you gonna?
70s was after the civil rights movement.
That's why it was either the 70s or the 50s. It's kind of hard to pin when like these student bodies started protesting and that type of stuff. But do you
Well,
just
look, look. Obviously, there were communists in the civil rights movement. I'm not denying
right?
that they played an important part. But what I'm actually trying to say is that the point is not about making white people a minority or being against white people. The point is the fact that communists had a theory, which I agree with, which is that the US never became a full democracy because black people still didn't have equal
Well,
rights.
America was never
So,
supposed to become a full democracy. It was never supposed to.
well, it was definitely supposed to be a republic by, for, and of the people, like Lincoln said. And the Reconstruction era and
Don't
the
look before
Emancipation.
Lincoln. Don't look before what the founding fathers had to say. Just look at.
The founding fathers had no idea what the country would eventually look like or
Neither did
evolve into. It was
Lincoln.
right, but he definitely created a new benchmark for
Yeah,
the future
completely
of the
fucking
USA.
revisionist one. I mean, that's like kind of stupid to bring up.
But look, without Lincoln, there's no such thing as a USA. So what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's. I mean, for better or for worse, I don't really know. But like the point of like bringing up Lincoln and all this stuff, it's like no man, America was never supposed to be a democracy. And like even when you say it's like a republic,
Yeah, but we don't have to get in the details of
well,
the
no, even a
electoral system.
republic like this, like America was supposed to be like this some type of aristocratic type of system where modeled off of like the ancient
Hold
republics
on,
of
one sec,
Rome and
one sec,
Greece.
one sec, one sec.
Like this kind of diversion here.
I'm gonna be right back. Give me one sec. I'm gonna be right back.
Here, I'll mute myself.
Hold that thought.
What's up, chat?
Anyway, what were you saying? Go on.
Well, to try to wrap it back in, I guess. I mean, would you agree that white people have an interest in like staying a majority and remaining like the dominant force in the country and the political process that their forefathers kind of built for
See,
them?
when you talk about white people being the dominant force or the non-dominant force, you're already framing politics and power in terms of racial division and balkanization. Why is it that white people have to either be dominant or subordinate? What if the actual power relations in this country are not actually rooted in race? Because white people don't actually really have any power. Only a minority do.
I agree. I agree with you
And
there. That's 100% true.
so only a minority of white people actually have power. And black people definitely don't have power.
I don't know about that.
So, well, they really don't, though. I mean, there's way less black people that have power than white people. That's a fact. Okay.
Not really, though. I
So,
mean, black people's interests definitely get represented more in the political process than white people's. And obvious, like
yeah, look, there's more lip service, but the way that it translates into reality, it's like a nothing sandwich. So they talk about a big sandwich, they talk about a big burger, and then in reality, they're delivering a nothing sandwich, and nothing changes for black people in America.
that's not true. That's not true.
Not a lot
I
has
mean, the material
changed.
well-being
Not
of
a lot.
black people has been improving, while white people it's been going down. I'd argue.
It's well, it's been marginally improving, but in terms of black communities, they have not really improved
Well, I mean, wealth,
significantly.
income, and things of that nature is definitely going up. And then if you look at white communities
There's
specifically,
more black class and there's more black people
right?
who are entering
So it's
into
it's
the
getting better for black people, but it's getting worse for
no,
white people.
not overall. I mean, it's pretty much the same for everyone.
I don't know. I don't really agree with that. But when you ask me if what'd you say? You said the political process. What happens if it's not about race, but it's about something else? I'm assuming you're alluding to like this type of class warfare. Well,
Yeah.
do these like does national and like ethnic and even racial identity like do these things have to contradict a type of class division? Like I don't really think so. And I think
Well, the thing is that America is one nation
I don't agree with
and
that.
race. Well, it is. Well, then you don't believe in America.
Well, no, I
America is
think
one
America
nation.
resembles more of a civilizational state that encompasses multiple different cultures and nation, and similar in a way to
Well,
other
there's
places in the
definitely
world.
different cultures and subcultures, and that's fine. But it is one nation, and the notion of race is just because a lot of people from a bunch of different nations all came here simultaneously, who were very far apart from each other for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
Not really true.
So, that is why we have this big continental category of
No,
race, because race is like a continental
no.
category. It's Europe, it's Africa, it's Asia. And that's just because America's a new nation. And the whole point of an American nation is building one people. So what you're talking about is racial division
Well, there's
and
always been
balkanization.
racial division in
Then
the
there should
country,
then
like it
there
was
should be
built
no
upon.
America. Then everyone should just
Well,
go
no, you're
back to
you're
their
basically
quote unquote.
saying you're telling like the founding fathers and like all the most of the important people in this country
They
before the
need to understand something about the founding fathers. They did not have a clear idea of what the long term consequences of building this kind of republic would be.
yeah,
It
but
was
they
a
made it
big
explicitly clear though they only wanted white people to be in it. Like that was pretty clear.
at the time, yes, but there's a reason they didn't put that in the
Well, have
Constitution.
you,
They made a law,
the preamble
naturalization.
No, the preamble says for ourselves and our posterity, meaning for ourselves and our descendants. And if you look at who the descendants are,
That
it was
could
only
be
white people.
pretty broadly interpreted, and there were so many thinkers among the founding fathers, who were not of the view that of any kind of racial exclusion.
Which
So,
ones?
you know, it, Benjamin Otis.
Benjamin, what did he say about race?
He said that he loved everyone. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm putting you on
Well,
the spot, man. It's okay.
my bad, James Otis.
That's something to say. I've
And
never heard
literally,
of
it's just
Benjamin
vocal.
Otis.
No, me neither. It was James Otis.
Okay.
In any case,
But definitely the consensus of the founding fathers and like the most important ones, like Jefferson, Franklin, Washington, Hamilton, John Jay, they made it very clear that they did not want non-white people in the country. And if you look how that manifested in policy, only people who become citizens were white. And like you
but that was it's true they were like racist and whatever. They didn't really
leftist
like black
Chaz
people. That's
communists, our founding fathers are racist. That's 1619 project, bro. I mean, what are you doing? No,
okay. Well, you just said they were
I'm just
racist.
fucking with you.
Yeah. Well, look, they were definitely racist, but the thing is that for them it was not the fundamental inceptual principle upon which the republic stood. It was just their convention and
That's not
prejudice
true, though.
during. Well, if it was a fundamental principle of what the republic must always eternally be, they would have put it in the Constitution. They would have put it in the fundamental, like defining documents of what the republic is. They wouldn't have just passed a law which can be amended and whatever and
I would
changed at
argue
any
they did
time.
put that in the Constitution with the preamble. I mean, you can say that language is vague, but when it says this is for
That
us,
it's very
I
vague.
don't think that
It's
is
very vague
And if
language.
it could be vague, even, and maybe I can grant it to be vague in the abstract, but if you put together what all these guys thought, the laws that they enacted, like for example, I mentioned John Jay, the Federalist Paper.
There was definitely a prejudice at the time in the sense that it would have been very radical according to their conventions at the time to to make give total equal citizenship to people who have very different culture than them and and were, by the way, people that were demeaned because they were slaves, remember that. And also the Indians or the indigenous people
For that
who they regarded as, well, no, I heard that they like to be called
No, I'm
Indians
just
more.
joking.
That's what I heard. Well, anyway, look, they definitely considered them heathens, and so these prejudices weren't rooted in the metaphysics of race. They were rooted in class
I
relationships because
100%
black people
disagree
were
with that,
enslaved.
right? Because, and I'll give it. Let me give
Well, that's the only
let me give two
reason.
examples. If I would consider the most important piece of political literature that was ever written in this country was the Federalist Papers. And in the Federalist Papers, John Jay said that he thought it was a gift from God of how homogenous and how racially and ethnically homogenous the colonies were. And that was a gift from God. And he thought that we ought to preserve it that way. And then if you go look at Jefferson in his, is it Notes on Virginia? I mean, he's literally writing equations based off of ancestry to determine how like what determines if someone's white or what determines someone's black. I mean, he's writing literal equations like if they have 1/4, 1/8.
But there was a huge range of views among these early Enlightenment thinkers about what race is and how to make sense of it. For example, I just mentioned James Otis, and we have Volkvulture here. The colonists, black and white, born here, are freeborn British subjects and entitled to all the essential civil rights. You are just what you're saying about their racism is true, but you're only painting one side of the picture. There is also another side.
Yeah, but that's one guy. Like
You're
I can show you the consensus of the founders, and then if you look at the laws that they enacted, it was very.
Look, the point is, they may have had a consensus about being racist. They were majority slave owners anyway.
Yeah, but that impacted the country they founded.
But the country was not founded upon that as a fundamental principle of what it has to be. That was not the point. So they weren't saying 200 years from now it's going to look exactly like this. All they said, it was a shot in the dark that we're going to build one united republic in a completely new land, totally different from Europe, totally new on a fresh blank page, and let's see where it goes. That was the idea at the founding
a property
of
that's a part of that is that it's for white people, and if we ever do abolish slaves, they got to go. And the reason why I bring this up is because I mean, not hold on, hold on,
Well,
hold on.
it, it wasn't quote unquote for white people because there was no, there was all sorts of other types of white people that they wouldn't have ever envisaged. For example, Slavic and Finnish and all these other subdivisions of the so-called white race. It was one historical sociological group, mainly
Oh, dude, this is
Anglo-Saxons
like
who
critical
came.
race theory stuff. Like, listen, right? It like first of all, there were
It's not critical race theory, it's common
no. That's
sense.
that's like well, first of all, it is critical
It's just
race
common
theory. No, it's
sense. Like
not because
it's
there
common.
were
It's common,
non-Anglo founding fathers. There were Irish and Italian and Catholic founding fathers.
and there were people who were for the independence movement.
Wait,
So
what?
what
Wait,
what are
can
we
you
talking
repeat
about
that
here?
part?
There were black people who fought for the independence
Right.
and were part of the movement
Well, it's a
on the
different thing to
streets
say
fight.
that they thought only white only meant Anglo, right? Because that I mean that's what you were saying, and that's like a very common repeated thing.
Well, in the yeah, that's really what they
No,
thought.
dude,
It
because
was in
there
the
were
other case
Scott.
exception.
Well, no, because there were Scottish and German and Irish.
Scottish and Irish, they were adjacent to the Anglo,
You think Italian? You
civilization.
think
Yeah,
like Irish and Italian Catholics are like adjacent to Anglos?
they were not really thinking of a
Well,
bunch
that's
of
who
like
was in the
Irish
colonies. Like
people.
there were Scots Irish Catholics and Italian
Yeah,
Catholics like who signed the Declaration of Independence.
I'm sure there was a Lebanese guy. There was
Not who
exceptions all
signed the
around, but the
Declaration
main.
of Independence.
I'm sure you'll find them if you look
There's
hard
only
enough. You'll
56.
find them.
I mean, oh, by the way, just a question about the James Otis guy. I mean, I've never really heard of that guy before. Was he like one of the 56 framers or signers of the Declaration of Independence or a framer of the Constitution? Like, that's not really a name I've ever really heard of.
Well, he is recognized by some as a founding
Yeah, but
father,
people
but
recognize
he
Thomas
died
Paine as
in.
a founding father, which is like bullshit.
Well, I don't think it's bullshit. Anyway, look, to get to the main point, it is true. Let me just finish this. It is true the founding fathers definitely, it would have been considered very radical for them, for what they considered foreign peoples and groups that didn't share their culture. And also, it was the same with class. So the founding fathers were terrified of the so-called mob rule of the poor underclass and the yeomen and even the white people who were working class and small farmers and so on rising up. I think he disconnected. Rising up to overthrow them. I think he disconnected. So it wasn't just they had these racial anxieties. They had anxieties. They had class anxieties too. Again, if look, this is the last thing I'm going to say about this too. The whole premise that the founding fathers are the sole people that had the authority to define the purpose of America, I actually reject that, because the people who were indispensable for actually winning America's independence was the common people. And it was a multiracial common people. And they had a dream and an idea of a totally independent republic. Totally. They had a dream too. So it's not just the founding fathers who should have the exclusive, although it's part of our national mythology that they do, I agree. It's just not true though. And then second of all, I'll say this again, even then, they did not make it a fundamental principle of what the republic must be forever, because it wasn't put in the Constitution. So that's what I would say. The USA was not just founded by the founding fathers. That's our myth. That's our national myth. The founding fathers are the symbol of the founding. But who are the real founding fathers? The real founding fathers were the masses of people that fought, spilled their blood, and made it happen. And they were white and they were black as well, and they were also mixed between black and white. So that was the real founding. It was the founding peoples of America, not just the founding fathers. Let's remember that. I'm not demonizing the founding fathers either. I'm just saying you can't reduce the whole vision and the whole spirit of what America is to their opinions and to their beliefs and to their point of view, because there were other points of view. idea. Okay, a nation is founded by a great movement of the masses, a great movement and development happening among the the tens of thousands of ordinary people who are rising up, and a great movement overtakes them and animates them, calls them into action. Dakota Sorelian, what an interesting name. What's going on? Well, I'll give you time to find your mic. We'll bring the based Irish Republican.
Are we talking about me?
Who is speaking right now?
Dakota Sorelian.
All right, Dakota. Go ahead.